Another tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to talk about services, work manager, and notification. Okay, so as you know that in my previous tutorial we learned about how to request permissions from the user and use Google Maps API, right? So in this chapter we'll be able to trigger a background task, create a notification for the user when a background task is complete, and launch an application from a notification. So actually in this series of tutorial series where I'll be talking a lot of things about services, work manager, and notification. So we'll create a very simple application to track long running process and report its progress to the user, right? We'll be doing actually our background, like for the moment of actually the background task can run for the very long time, but in my application I'm gonna just use a task which completes in 15 seconds, just to avoid waiting for a long time, right? Actually ongoing background tasks are quite common in mobile world. Background tasks run even when the application is not active. Example of long running background tasks are like downloading a files, resource cleanup jobs like playing music, resource cleaning jobs, okay, playing music, and tracking the user's location. These are all long running background tasks. Okay, so historically Google has offered different Android different multiple ways offered like Android developers multiple ways of executing such tasks, like services, job scheduler, and Firebase job dispatcher, and alarm manager. With the fragmentation that existed in the Android world, it was quite a mess, right? It was very mess to cope with everything. So all this multiple ways. But since March 2019, we have a better, more stable option, which is called Work Manager. So by the introduction of this Work Manager, Google has abstracted the logic of choosing a background execution mechanism based on the API version away from us. So we still so that means it has made much more easier for us to manage the background task. So we still use a foreground service, which is a special kind of service for certain tasks that should be known to the user while running, such as playing music or tracking the user's location in the running app. So services, actually what is services? Services are application component designed to run in the background even when an app is not running, except for foreground services which are tied to notifications. Services have no user interface. Okay, so actually there are also foreground services and background services. We'll also be discussing that. So services are application components designed to run in background even when the app is not running. Okay, so this is the important point to understand. Services has no user interface, with foreground services being the exception. It has a UI. So it is important to know that services run on the main thread of their hosting process. This means that the operation can block the application, so it is up to us to start a separate thread from within a service to avoid that. Okay, so we'll be covering how to start a background task using Work Manager, and we will also use a background operation noticeable to the user using foreground service. So we'll be dealing with these two important concepts. So let's start a background task using Work Manager. So okay, let's start that. But before, we have to also understand like something interesting about this Work Manager. That is a what is a Work Manager? Work Manager that receive work and in queue is based on the unprovided arguments and constraint, such as internet connection and device charging. So what is a worker? So there's some four main important class in the Work Manager. I already told you about Work Manager. Then the second one is called worker. This is a wrapper around, but first let's go and implement the library that we have to import in our Gradle. Okay, it's a Work Manager library. So let's implement Android X worker runtime 281. We have the new version. Yes, so let me sync now, and let me just explain you step by step what are the important more important classes of our work manager. So let's go to uh, the work manager. Work manager. Actually, I'm not able to get the revealed project. Okay, as you can see here, work manager. So we have this important class called work manager, right? So this work manager actually is this receives work, and in queue is based on the in queues the work based on the provided arguments and constraints such as internet connectivity and device charging. So this is one important class. There is also another interesting class which is called worker. I cannot access it right now in this way. Let me see if I have a worker. Okay, let's see. Actually, okay, you see there is also another class called worker, which is also this is a wrapper around the work that needs doing, that needs to be done, right? So that keeps on doing, right? It has one function called do work, which work like workers do work, right? So which we override to implement the background working code. So the do work functions will be executed in the background thread. So it will be executed in the background thread. So work, as you can see here, there is this do work function will be executed in the background thread. Okay, so there is also quest. Let me see if I have a work request. Yeah, there is another important class which is called work request. This class actually binds a worker class to arguments and constraints. Okay, there are two types of work request: one time work request which runs the work once, and a periodic work request which can be used to schedule work to run at fixed interval. Okay, and listener, there are also listenable worker, listenable worker. Yeah, this listenable worker, this listenable worker dot result, you probably so like, you know, actually it's like class holding the result of the executed work, you know. So the result can be success, failure, or retry. Okay, as you can see, the recent worker is a future. Okay, the result can be success, you know, failure, retry, you know, as you can see here. So yeah, these are all about the library things, right? So we'll be implementing this step by step, one by one. Okay, so let me just clean this code. Okay, so other than these four classes, we have also the data class which holds data passed to and from the worker, right? So let's go and check what we can do with our application. Our application, this is a very simple application where I will be using um, worker implementing this worker manager. So I'll be dividing into different works, right? You know, like we can say uh, okay, so yeah, we can just check it, and we can execute a background work with the work manager class. Okay, so yeah, first thing is we have already implemented our library, the necessary library, work runtime. And now the next thing that we have to do is we need to create a new class to do some work, right? So let's create. So actually I have created a package where I have a simple empty work manager activity, but there will be I have to also define some work. So let's create a work like what work we can create. We can create a work for a okay, let me see what work we can do. Okay, let's create a Kotlin class which is okay, sportsman. Okay, sportsman worker. Okay, so sports man or player. Okay, a player, I will track all the work that a player will be doing. So a player will do some stretching, player stretching worker. He will do some stretching work, right? And okay, let me just create this class. So now we will pretty much implement the worker. It is also a worker, so we will be passing the, obviously the worker, you need a context and worker parameters, right? So we will be defining them. We need a context, we need worker parameters. Okay, so then we will pass that to the our main parent class that we are inheriting, and we create the this player stretching worker. Okay, so then obviously, as I told you before, we have to override this callback called do work, where we will be doing our work, and we'll be doing the player is gonna do the stretching work. So player id is input data get string. So let me define some constants here. Companion object const value input data player id in id. Then we also have a output data player id is out id, and get string input data player id. So this is a player id, and then we pretty much just to simulate the work, we will just sleep for 3 seconds, and output data will be data dot builder put string data player id and player id. Then we build this output data and result the return the result with success, and also pass the output data, right? Okay, so this is the first worker that I have created. So then I can also create multiple other workers. Like similarly, I can also do create another worker. Let's create another worker which is pretty much player will stretch first, and then you will do some exercise. Player size worker, no, let's do it player will play worker Okay, so the player will also actually now play. Yeah, and similarly it also actually does everything that uh, it's the similar pattern, you know. Because I'm just gonna sleep, you know. Instead of sleeping, you can just execute your code, you know. Execute your code here. So for this demo purpose, I'm just, our worker is pretty much sleeping, you know. Player is gonna play here, right? And there is a stretching worker. It plays stretch first, it plays for, then it's gonna rest, right? So let's create also player finally rest worker. Okay, it will just rest down, you know. Every codes are pretty similar because you know, like our code is not going doing anything, but it's just sleeping, just to just for the purpose of demo. I'm just creating just the using this thread sleep. Okay, so now what next? After we have created all the workers, we have to go and implement this worker in our main working manager activity, right? So let's go and implement these workers. So to implement this worker, what we have to do is we have to go to our activity that we are already here in our activity. Then we have to uh, create a class that will pretty much create a input data, right, for the work for the player. Get player id input data. It's a player id where id key is a string, and player id value is also a string. What it's gonna do is a data builder player id key player id value and build. So this is pretty much what it's gonna do. It's gonna it's a helper function to construct our input data instance for us, right? So then on create, so let's go to our on create. We gonna instantiate our work manager, which is like a work manager get instance. And then now we start implementing the work manager is a work constraints is constraints dot builder, right? So after the builder, we set required network type is a network type connected build, right? So there are some network constraints. Cat so there will be like a player player id will be player 1 So we will also have to create a player stretching stretching request is a one time work request dot builder. We create a player stretching worker class, right? Then we set constraints that will be network constraints, and then we have to set input data will be get player input data, which will be passing player worker stretching worker input data id and get player id, and then player id, right? layer id. Okay, let's see what's the difference here. Value is a okay, there was a mistake here, it's a player id. Okay, so what next? Then finally we have to build this request, right? So after we build this request, we'll also create another request, similar request, obviously, for not player stretching but player playing request, which will have pretty much a similar mechanisms. Player playing worker, player play worker, and then similarly we have to also create the another one which is for rest worker, rest worker. Okay, yes, so we have actually a request for these three workers: player stretching, player playing worker request, and then player resting worker request, right? Then after having this creating this request, we will use this WorkManager to okay, let me just close this down. This WorkManager to get the work info by id live data. Then we have to pass the first we will pass the stretching request dot id. Then we have to obviously observe this, and we'll get the worker info. So this worker info, if the info is state is finished, then we have to show the result, right? So this showing the result, we will create another helper function for showing the result. So private function show result will pretty much what it will show, it will show the toast make text message length and so this result. Okay, so result is we will be showing player done stretching. Okay, and similarly we'll be also doing a similar we'll be getting the work info by ID for each and every um, worker. So that is player playing request ID, and then we will also have obviously player done playing. After he has done playing, then player rest after he has done resting, right? So it's pretty similar, right? The pattern is pretty similar. And then finally we will have to work manager. You have to begin with the obviously you have to begin your work. So first you do stretching, player stretching request, then obviously player will play playing request, then obviously player will rest, right? Rest no, sorry, player rest request, and then you have to finally in queue this task, which is gonna just to, the work manager is gonna just in queue your task in background, starting from this work, then it's gonna do this work, then it's gonna do this work. So it's pretty synchronous manner, so okay, so we can pretty much do that. So let me do one thing. Let me just text view match parent wrap content, and let me just text is player work, okay, and let me add the style is title style, okay, and then let me add another interesting thing is top of parent and bottom to parent. Let me extract the string to the string resource, and what else, let me see the okay, so player work work, and let me add also edit this one, okay, and let me run the application, guys, and let's see if we are all doing well, right? Okay, so after 3 seconds you see player done stretching, you see after 3 seconds more you will player done playing, after 3 seconds more the player will be done resting, you see. And yeah, this is the task that is happening pretty much in background, and it's a demo of our work manager, and yes, it's pretty working fine. So yeah, guys, if you have any questions, please do write me a comment. If you like my videos, please do like, subscribe, and press the bell button. And thank you, and catch you up in the next lecture, which is obviously gonna be about work manager, the advanced work manager, that I'm gonna continue this video. Thank you, guys.